Yay. Okay, the people are here. Yes.
Okay, testing, testing, 1, 2, 3. Can everybody hear me? How about the folks in the back there? Who's that? Who's that? Ruby? Ruby? Hey, can you hear me? Yeah, you can hear me. Great. Thank you so much for your patience tonight. The traffic, for some bizarre reason, is like completely crazy, and a lot of people here are coming from Hoist, so we wanted to give everyone a 10-minute buffer to get here. But I think it's definitely past time to start. And where's the clicker? Okay, welcome to Nerd Nite Okinawa, September 9th edition. We have no particular set theme for every event. We just want 3 nerdy speakers to nerd out solidly for 2 hours. Okay, so we have some house rules. This is a learning and curiosity-driven space. Please be mindful of this. If you should never ever take anyone at their word when they tell you they're an expert. You should always question that. But if you do want to question, please raise your hand when you want to ask questions or discuss. Keep your language simple and respectful. There are lots of different backgrounds here tonight, and a lot of people who are non-native English speakers. Please respect people's pronouns. My name is Chris, and I'm non-binary. I use the pronouns they, them, and I would appreciate it if you could too. When you've ordered, or if you've ordered and your buzzer goes off while someone is speaking, please switch it off as soon as possible. It has a little, button on the side, I think. And please keep your cell phones on silent. So, faces at Nerd Night tonight, I thought I might give you a quick introduction to the team. So I did not start with Nerd Night. I am not the founder. A wonderful woman named Margaret Mars Brisbane started Nerd Night in 2018, and we ran solidly for almost 2 years, meeting once a month to discuss nerdy stuff. But we had a bit of a hiatus during COVID, and then in that time, Maggie graduated and moved on. She's now a postdoc at Woods Hole Institute, and you should try and follow her on social media. But I tried to reboot. I was part of the original Nerd Night team, and I thought it would be great to reboot Nerd Night. That's me, yours truly. To my left is Scotty, Andrew Scott, who also works at OIST, and he is the one who is responsible for getting our streaming up and running. And he's happily loaned us his streaming equipment, and we're incredibly grateful for that. I also want to highlight the person on my right, who is Meg, and she's over there. And Meg is like the most extraordinary human being. She's like Wonder Woman. I think the applause, because most people know that. But then there's Ali Martinez, and she's representing people from On Base, or the base community here. She's reaching out to the nerds in the Okinawan military community. She's also known as the 26 or almost 27-year-old Trekkie on Twitter. Then over here is Rotem. He was unfortunately not part of Team Meeting Photograph Day, but he's from Ryudai University, and he's been doing a lot of work spreading the news at Ryudai University and down south on Nerd Night, helping us to look for speakers. Then definitely Sarah Beth, who is the wonderful door person. She's the face of Nerd Night Okinawa. She's been greeting people at the door and maybe trying to get your temperature and take a reading. And I'm incredibly grateful that she's here to bring a smile to every event. And then, I also wanted to point out Hiku is the manager here at Esparza, and he's also, I think, one of the artists tonight. Yes, he's one of the contributing artists of the beautiful art that you see on display here tonight. And he's been instrumental in helping us get set up and figure out what stuff is going on, how to get everything set up technically. And he's not here tonight because he's celebrating a family event. Right. So, if you're interested in being a Nerd Night speaker, please come and speak to any of the team members, or mail us, or follow us on any social media. We are looking for nerdy speakers, and we want any kind of speaker. We want expert, academia, technical, unusual, and or mostly underappreciated. Hobbies, arts, interests, amateurs, and fandoms. We want to hear all about it. Current events, are you like a world news nut? We want to hear what you think we should all be listening to and thinking about. And activism, whether that's talking about the topic you're advocating for, or giving us an overview of your process, your learning, your method. There's a lot of overlap between activism and any kind of passion and hobby, and problem-solving skills that we can all benefit from if you come and talk to us about them. I would like to give over now very quickly to Meg, who's going to talk more about Esparza's tacos and coffee. Thank you, Meg.
Okay, hi everyone. Thank you for being here tonight. Again, my name is Meg. Thank you, Chris, for the lovely introduction. So what I do here is I help coordinate events. Awesome to see so many familiar faces here. And our owner, Mark Esparza, a lot of what he wanted was a space that's focused on community. So what I'll start is by saying this. If there's an event that you have in mind, feel free to come see me, because that's very much so what this space is about, is highlighting our community and bringing people together. So this month, what we have tonight, obviously, is Nerd Night. And then next week, we have our Happy Tales dog adoption event, Nayuta. This is Nayuta. Can everyone please give her a round of applause? Do you want to come up and speak about your event shortly? Okay, I won't put you on the spot. But Nayuta is really a community leader here on Okinawa. So she helps rescue dogs. And please follow her, search for our Instagram. You'll find Nayuta, so you can see the work that she does with Happy Tales. Then Fuku Fuku Clothing Exchange, that'll be the next day on Saturday the 18th. And that's kind of an upcycling event. So the idea is that if you have clothes that are sitting in your closet that you're not wearing, bring them and exchange them with people. We'll have a series of vendors, so we'll have the opportunity to upcycle new pieces. And again, for the community is really coming together and getting to know each other. And then at the end of every month, we have open mic night. So if you have any musical talent, please come on over. And if your talent is just listening to music and appreciating it, please come. It's the last Saturday of every month from 7 to about 9, but we're looking to expand that. So we have one of our musicians over here tonight. Yeah, sorry to call you out, but please come on over. If you have questions, come see me or find us on Facebook or Instagram. I also just want to let you know Chef Juana is here. So the menu is thanks to Chef Juana. Thank you, Chef Juana. And I do want to shout out a few other people, so bear with me. We have Miri here. So if you again look around the walls, all the art is coordinated by Miri, who's not only an artist herself. I caught her at just the right moment when she was a full mouth. But her, a lot of her role here is finding new artists and making sure that we're showcasing. Tonight, it's a joint exhibition of Hikaru Hik, who's our store manager, and then Oki Coast Ocean Art. So you'll see some completely unique pieces up here, kind of behind that ocean mural, if you will. So platycerium on the background of ocean. If you have questions about that, I will lead you to it. Come see me, and thank you for being here tonight. Bye.
All right, and we as Nerd Night would not exist without Esparzas. So thank you very much to the restaurant as a whole for hosting us and homing us. Finally, please contact and follow us. We are Nerd Nite Oki everywhere, and that's Nite spelled Nite. And you can, so the Gmail address is wrong, I just realized this today. It's nerdniteokinawa@gmail.com if you would like to contact us to be a speaker or if you would like to join the mailing list so you're aware of our events every month. All right. And then I just wanted to quickly announce that please already put in your calendars or save the date. We have a very special Nerd Nite Okinawa event in October by this incredible woman, Cho, who is going to talk to us about Myanmar, what's happening in Myanmar, and her work supporting both the people back in Myanmar as well as the people in Okinawa from Myanmar that are almost like refugees here because of the struggle there. That will be on Sunday, October 16th, and the event will be in Japanese with simultaneous translation thanks to Muka, who is somewhere, and we're incredibly grateful and thankful for that. And without further ado, I would like to introduce everyone to our first speaker. All right, our first speaker tonight is a physicist in real life, and then every other moment of the day he's a philosopher. And I know this because I'm his partner, and I used to be one of those people that like, oh, philosophy is interesting. On a Sunday afternoon, you take a book, you read, you make a cup of tea. No. We listen to philosophy while we're cooking, while we're driving, while we're brushing our teeth in the mornings, and it's really been great. And he's kind of a history nut as well, so we tend to go on these long podcasting journeys of like history of Africana philosophy, which is like insane, and some other very long-running philosophy podcasts. But Jesse tonight wanted to talk about how philosophy is something that is accessible to everyone, and actually, I guess originally it started out with memes, and he felt that memes were a way to show that we are all already kind of philosophers, and we're all already thinking about really complex ideas and about how we're living our lives. And he wanted to bring together the science of philosophy, or the philosophy of science, as well as moral philosophy, to you tonight. And it is my great pleasure to introduce him.
Thank you. So I'm definitely an amateur. I've never really studied poetry, philosophy, and I never really got into it until
Thank you, Takeshi.
I never really got into it actually until I found this history of philosophy course. It's sort of presenting, thanks. It's presenting philosophy from all throughout history, and once you sort of get past the abstract and the clunky different language, you find actually a lot of relatable concepts. And of course, I don't have time to show you all that, but I thought I'd pick a couple of topics that I found relatable and try and explain them and how I think they support this viewpoint that everyone's a philosopher. I'll start with what I know, which is science. And I'll claim that scientists are philosophers. So we really see science as this sort of, it's a process for discovering and improving objective knowledge. And so there doesn't seem to be a lot of space for critical thought in that. But I'll actually show that lots of value judgments and complicated sorts of decisions that actually require some philosophical thought are necessary in the scientific process. So to start that, I'll explain a bit about the philosophy and the logic of how the scientific process works. And a lot of this is thanks to the work of Karl Popper in the early 20th century. Karl Popper, the book, The Logic of Scientific Discovery. And so this is an old philosophical problem that there's no reliable way to turn a collection of experiences into a general theory. Something will explain how things work, what's causing these experiences to come about, and what's making things happen. And so if you try and make a theory that explains everything you've seen, there's nothing to prevent at some time you'll have an experience, you'll observe something that doesn't agree with the theory, and you just have to throw it away. And so when that happens for a well-established theory, this is called a black swan event. And where this name comes from, apparently there was an old European or perhaps British saying that for something rare or non-existent, it's as rare as a black swan. And when the Europeans came to Australia, they discovered something that the people living there had known for quite some time, that there are black swans. I'm sure they saw a lot of other crazy new stuff as well, but thanks to the saying, this is the one that stuck. But thanks to Karl Popper, he suggested a different way of doing things, and we can really turn this process around, because it's okay to go the other way. You can't generalize experiences to theories, but you can use theories to make predictions. So you can go from a theory to some things you expect to see based on the theory. And if you then see something you don't expect to see, of course you can throw away that theory. But and there's nothing, of course, to stop this from happening. But the point is that this gives us a really nice process. It's the scientific process. It gives you something to do, make theories, and go out and test them. And it gives you a reason to prefer some theories over other theories. And in fact, the theories that are more falsifiable turn out to tell us more about how the world is. They make more specific predictions. There's a smaller set of things that will agree with the theory. And so we can, by this, understand how things work better. And so there, of course, this was 100 years ago, and people had plenty of time to think about this. And there's a few sort of philosophical problems with it. A big one being, sorry, before I move on to that, I'll say, of course, in science, the long-standing predictions that are shown, a long time after the theories are made, are some of the most famous parts of science. So things like the discovery of the Higgs boson 30 years after it was predicted, or the discovery of the detection of gravitational waves 100 years after the theory of general relativity, and things like genetic inheritance as the explanation for the appearance of dominant and recessive traits are all really good examples of theories being sort of bolstered by these correct predictions. But one of the problems with this process is it's never a simple matter to go from a theory to a prediction. To make a prediction from a theory. And you're always having to make these side hypotheses like, my equipment works like I expected or I'm using the theory correctly to interpret my results, or this sort of thing. So when you do come up with a contradiction to your theory, you never know whether you falsified the theory itself or just one of these side hypotheses. And a really famous recent example of this in physics, at least, is the claim maybe about 10 years ago that neutrinos travel faster than the speed of light. And so this claim was basically immediately dismissed even before they discovered that, in fact, the timing measurements were wrong. So this experiment consisted of making some neutrinos in one place and measuring how long they took to arrive in another place. And because of just this cable plugged in incorrectly, that was enough to throw out the timing instruments and make it look like the neutrinos were traveling faster than light. So, but apart from all these, when we choose to accept theories, it's because we've exhausted all our avenues for falsifying them, or there's only so many experiments you can do that agree with something before you say, okay, that's probably correct. So at that point, there's always a possibility that you are wrong to accept a theory. And this is being coined as inductive risk. And it's at that point you can sort of weigh the risk of being wrong. Perhaps you're just studying the cause of some disease, and maybe if you're wrong about the disease, people are going to suffer from the disease. And so you can sort of make a decision about that. But it's easy for a scientist to say, well, we can leave those decisions to the funding agencies and the policymakers in choosing what science to fund. But more recently, in 2000, Heather Douglas showed that actually these decisions apply throughout the scientific process. And she gives the example of studying the toxicity of dioxins. So dioxins are these poisonous chemicals that sort of accumulate in the food chain, and they're a byproduct of some manufacturing processes. So there's something we can't quite avoid making, but we can regulate and control how much of them are produced, perhaps. And so you want to really be setting a safe level of these dioxins to make sure that they're not causing cancer and so And the way you find out what is the safe level is you take groups of rats and you dose some of them and you don't dose some of them with the chemical, and let them live out their lives, which takes about 2 years. And then you look for cancer in the rats. And if you find more cancer in the rats that are dosed, then you say, okay, that was a toxic level of the chemical. But of course, this is sort of a random process, and there's a limit to how many rats that you can test. So you have to use methodology called statistical significance. So when there's a random chance of something happening, you don't know, if there's more cancer in the dose rats, whether it was just natural randomness or whether those extra cases are attributable to the chemical. And so you have to use some level or cutoff above which you can say, yes, this was caused by the chemical. And so, of course, when you make that decision, you're deciding, how toxic does the dioxin have to be before I'll actually find that it's toxic. And so it's at that point where you're actually affecting the final outcome of your experiment and what you can find about this chemical. And that's not something you can really leave to the policymakers. Of course, it's possible to combine these studies, but there's also other aspects of the decision making where you can't really go back and look at the statistics or all this sort of thing. So it really is ultimately down to the scientists. And that's why I say scientists and philosophers, because we're having to make these decisions that we're having to weigh up our subjective values about the impact of our science against the knowledge that we're creating. And that's kind of difficult. I will say, Douglas did point out, if your work is not having an immediate impact on society, maybe you're studying basic science, some fundamental science, and she actually gave the example, funnily enough, of something really relevant to my field, which is now producing technology that's being used. So I'm gonna, in that spirit, go ahead and cross my fingers and say, if you're studying gravity, you don't need to worry about the impacts on society, because we're not going to discover anti-gravity and launch space colonies in 20 years, like in Interstellar. So that's it for scientists as well. So did anyone have any quick questions about that? I'm happy to. I will go on.
Sounds good.
Sorry.
So this inductive reason could be considered a part of the methodology itself, and not a meta statement about methodology from outside. Sometimes.
I think so.
So it's not philosophy, but science itself.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's a bit fuzzy to call it philosophy, but yeah. So sorry for people on the screen. So it was just pointing out that inductive risk should be considered part of the science rather than philosophy. Perhaps.
But it's more about value, which is not scientific concept.
Yeah. So I mean, it really matters who's doing the science, because and the more diverse the scientists are, the more of these different values and the benefits of science can be spread more fairly. I'll keep moving. So yeah, I was originally going to try and convince you of this heading based on memes, but I found it a bit too much of a challenge to make a coherent story out of them. But I'll get to my next topic by way of memes. You might have seen this one if you're on the Twitter. Two people on a bus, one's unhappy, one's happy. One's happy because they're looking at a nice landscape, one's unhappy because they're looking at the mountain. I guess they're not a geologist. And this is sort of an illustration of stoicism. You know, they're both on the same journey. The only thing that's different is the one's choosing to sort of look at the unhappy surroundings, one's choosing to look at the pleasant surroundings. And so that's a choice you can make regardless of the journey that you're on. And of course, it's inspired lots of mashups. Here's one of Plato's Canon. So, and the idea here being, the idea of Plato's Canon is, you know, we're not really experiencing reality. We're really looking at shadows cast on a wall, by shadow puppets. And here the passengers are also the puppeteers. So now everyone's happy. But of course, the point of Plato's Canon is that it's philosophy, of course, that will free you from the fear, to let you experience the reality. Just one more. This is a reference to Pavlov's dog. And the joke here is that Pavlov's dog, it was an experiment where, you know, a dog was fed and a bell was rung at the same time, and it learned to associate the sound of the bell with the feeding. And at some point, once you trained it this way, you could simply ring the bell and the dog would begin to salivate. And of course, the joke is it's an automatic response from the dog, but here it's imagining that it's really choosing to salivate. Which brings me to the topic of free will, that I kind of avoid talking about for some reason. But I found a really nice viewpoint on it from the philosopher P.F. Strawson. So he wasn't really a moral philosopher, but he did write this. I forgot the name of the paper, but it's easy enough to find, I'm sure. And this problem is based on the fact that, you know, we seem to live in a deterministic universe. We're made of atoms. All these things follow physical laws. Our behaviors, the result of chemicals and electrical signals in our brains. So where's the room for free will and in particular moral responsibility? So this is a question, you know, and Strawson sort of contrasts two camps of the determinists, whether you know, the optimists say it's okay that we don't have choice because it's still okay to punish people for bad actions because it results in a better society. And the pessimists say, well, actually, that's not enough of a justification. It's not okay despite this. And Strawson says, oh, hey, wait a minute, let's dial it back and look at it from a more relatable, slightly less abstract point of view. And his central claim is that, you know, the mere fact that when somebody does something to harm us, we feel angry, we resent their actions. And the point is that you're not going to resent something unless you really believe that they had a choice. You know, you don't resent a dog for biting you. You resent somebody for bad mouthing you or this sort of thing. And it even goes further. This is the argument against the pessimists. And the argument against the optimists is, of course, we still choose not to punish people or to resent when we believe somebody didn't have a choice. We excuse their actions. And so the point Strauss is making is that this concept of free will is not really this high concept of abstract philosophy. It's really, it's part of human nature to believe in this. And he says, basing our societies around this concept that our practices do not exploit our natures, they express them. And this the point I was trying to make with the talk, I guess. That the world wasn't built by a few people thinking big ideas. It was built by everybody a little bit at a time, and the world isn't just the things around us. It's the people we are, the things we know, and the way we treat each other. And that's something all of us can contribute to and build together. So, thanks. Just one more.
Yeah, you can ask if anyone wants questions.
Yeah, any questions or comments? Amir?
So, Chris mentioned that you listen to podcasts all the time about philosophy. Do you have a recommendation for a podcast philosophy for beginners or for dummies? Because I'm a good scientist, so.
Yeah, so my recommendation of a podcast for beginners is. Sorry, the question was a recommended. What is my recommendation of podcast for about philosophy for beginners? I said I really got into it because of the history of philosophy without any gaps by Peter Adams. And that would be my recommendation. And also the disclaimer, they haven't covered any of the material here, so if I mangled any of it, it's not their fault. Yes?
You showed a very nice slide on people looking into the mountains and some looking into the How do you make it change the perspective? How do you make it change?
I guess on the bus you change your seat.
I mean, that is one way of looking into it. It's like it's more of a mental state, right?
Right.
Yeah.
How do you change your perspective in this situation? I guess I would have to say go and read about some stoicism, but I didn't find anything too convincing there, so I'm not sure.
There's a question at the back. Ezra.
Ezra?
I was wondering about the three pictures you showed about the neutrino meter. Sorry. Yeah. What's the difference between those three rods?
I think they're all. Sorry, the question was what's the difference between the pictures?
Yeah, is it that during the experiment the plug rotated or something?
I kind of just threw them in. I think the reason there's more than one picture is just to sort of establish when during the data taking that this happened. I think they all show the cable not properly plugged in. But it's hard to see the last one there.
I have one question. So I kind of have the impression that maybe nowadays scientists lose the idea that there might also be a philosopher in their heart, or maybe what they might want to be in terms of science in general. Do you think that's happening? And if so, how do you think scientists should embrace their inner philosopher?
It's a tough question. So the question was, whether I think scientists are losing the philosopher inside and how they might come to embrace their inner philosopher. I would say, in general, to try and keep in touch with the world outside of science is a good start. Literally any other interest is not too closely related to science. It's probably good, especially one that brings you into touch with people and people that you might not otherwise meet.
Like nerd night.
Yes, I can. Again, so
You said that you evaluate your like risks in methodology based on values, which are maybe outside. But what if my value is the like knowledge itself, like basic value? There are like many values, including like improving human life, but one of them is the knowledge itself, like as the main ultimate goal.
right. So this question was, or comment was that one of the values when we're discovering is knowledge itself. I'm not sure how you weigh up. And I mean, in that case, like that might often be for fundamental science, and then there's nothing you have to weigh it against, perhaps. So it's not so much of a problem to decide what kind of value it is.
Just sometimes you can say that the science and knowledge is a mean to achieve good life, which is a value, or sometimes you can say that good life is a mean to achieve like environment for science, which is a value. And what is the mean? What is the goal? It depends on your mindset.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
All right.
Thanks again.
Switch computers.
Hi everyone. Ooh, wow, that's your tall. Okay. Hi everyone. Thank you so much. I want to say thank you to everyone for being so mindful of the buzzers and all of that. What we'll ask for our second and third speakers, we're actually going to ask that we'll close down ordering. So we're going to give a 15-minute break. If you do want to buy something, please use these 15 minutes, and then we'll actually close the cashier just to help minimize some of the noise for the back of the room. So please talk amongst yourselves. If you want to purchase something, go ahead and do that, and then make it back to your seats in about 15 minutes. Thank you.
Jesse, that was awesome. Great job. Awesome. Are you ready?
Yeah,
You're okay to use that?
I guess. I did. I was.
Okay. Awesome.
Let me see if I have anything, and then otherwise I'll just leave my phone here because I don't really need to. Sure.
Yeah, this purple thing is not gonna.
You know what? Actually, let me keep an eye out for it.
Good thing. Thank you for making it. Was it bad? The traffic? What's happening?
Yep, it's working. So we have
Yeah, just like 5 minutes. So she's giving everyone a chance to get up and make a noise and order, and then like in a few minutes we'll get started. Because otherwise people are going to be like, beep, 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 throughout the talk.
He set up.
Yeah, I know it.
I'm gonna put on my laptop just in case.
Just in case you run out of power, yes, good idea.
Especially when objective
This is for you because I stole yours. Yep.
Okay, I wasn't going to tell you because I want you to focus. For the Q&A, if you could repeat the questions into the
Oh
mic.
yeah. Oh yeah.
How are you feeling? Ready?
Thank you. Thank you.
You're gonna rock it. Let's get started.
Hi. Everybody, it looks like everyone is making their way back to their seat. We're going to move on to the second speaker of the evening. Takeshi, wait.
Yep.
Yep. All right. So Takeshi is a Peruvian-born, third-generation Japanese diaspora citizen, right?
No, I'm not citizen. I'm just descendant, like diaspora.
Descendant, right? But he's always felt throughout his life that he's more connected to his Okinawa roots, right? So I met Takeshi. I was originally working in the lab where he ended up doing his PhD, and I remember, so through him and some of his friends, I remember hanging out with them and like being completely amazed at this guy who like did everything. Like he makes cocktails for everyone. He made some amazing dish where he just set tomatoes on fire, and it was the most amazing thing we've ever tasted. And then I got to know him more and more, and I think I know him better now as like a Magic the Gathering master. He'd really slay within like 3 turns, and he won't last 5 seconds, and he's got like the most incredible selection of Magic the Gathering cards. And I remember my first Magic the Gathering day, I walked in there and he's like, squirrels! And he gave me this deck of squirrels, which I completely just like, it was terrible. My squirrels they were splattered all over tree trunks. But I think, thank you very much for being so generous and letting me use your beautiful, expensive set. And then I was hopelessly addicted, obviously, to Magic after that. I'm still scared of him a little bit, like especially when he rolls up the map. It's like, okay, prepare to suffer. But I'm really excited to hear your talk tonight. Okay. And I missed his PhD thesis. He recently defended. Congratulations.
Thank you.
And I don't think we're going to get like this much of thesis, and the rest looks like, stuff from the internet. But I'm looking forward to it. Thank you, Takeshi, for coming out to speak tonight.
Thank you for the introduction. Good night, everybody. How are you feeling? Good? Nice. So today I'm going to talk a little bit about my topic that is related to my PhD. It's not completely everything I've done, but always. So my talk today is called Synthetic Life, Building Artificial Cells from Scratch. So I would like to start my presentation with one of the most debated questions in science, at least in biology, which is what is life, right? And for centuries, for millennia, humanity have tried to understand life, tried to define life. But we still don't really have a proper answer to that question. Like all these approaches, I would like to say belongs to what I call like traditional biology, right? They are focused on discovering, understanding living organisms and interactions. But recently, there's a new branch of biology, it's called synthetic biology, which they approach life, or they approach the study of life with a different perspective. They try to redesign, to create new systems, new artificial systems, and this way we can gather some new information about life, or what constitutes life. And well, nowadays, synthetic biology has so many applications, so many different cool stuff we can do, like genome editing belongs to this branch. Like we can. Does that have a pointer? Well, like we can print organs now, although we are like early stages of this research, but I mean in the future we can be awesome. But today I'm gonna focus on these two things, like synthetic life and artificial cells, which is basically the final goal, one of the final goals of synthetic biology, which is creating artificial life. But what is life? Like, what is life actually? So we don't really have an answer. We're still struggling to really kind of define life. Like one of the first things we learn when we study biology is that we cannot define life. What we can do though, is describe life through all these characteristics of life. So there's what's called a theory of cell, which was coined like in the mid 19th century, which tells, okay, the fundamental unit of life is a cell. All living cells must have all these characteristics, and all living cells that exist nowadays derive from another living cell, right? So we have characteristics like metabolism, we have characteristics like organization, like reproduction, adaptability, nutrient intake, response to stimuli, growth, development, evolution, etc., etc. Now, this is a living cell, but now through synthetic biology, we're trying to create an artificial cell. So what we're trying to do is reassemble a cell, like component by component, and this way kind of emulate some of these characteristics of life. Of course, we haven't reached the point where we can actually reproduce all of them. We still have a lot of challenges like growing and developing, reproduction, not intake. Oh, we're trying. Now, the cool thing about artificial cells, at least the one that we have nowadays, is like we are trying to mimic life. So this way we can study life, and we can also miniaturize like biochemical reaction. There's a whole different set of properties that emerge when we start working with small volumes. We can study life because it's much simpler. When we try to assemble a cell, we can simplify the processes. And importantly, and this is one of the most interesting things, like we can start using like engineering materials, synthetic materials that sometimes not compatible with life. And this way we can create and engineer new processes in these artificial cells. So let's try to make an artificial cell. How we do it? There's different approaches. So for that we need to understand like cell is organized in different layers, different levels, from a complex, the cell, the whole, to the parts, the simple parts. Now, if we go from top to bottom, we have what we call like top-down approach, which is what has been done for years already, which is basically modifying what already exists and trying to find what's different and remove something or modify something. It's basically like metabolic and genetic engineering. The other approach, which is, I believe, a little more interesting than what I was working with, is the bottom-up approach, which basically we create a system starting from the components and we build up to the whole. Now, maybe in that advertisement, I said something like, we already have artificial life. And it's kind of true. Like in 2010, this guy, like Craig Ventures, where a team from his lab, led by Smith, another laureate, they create or claim to have created the first artificial organism. But I would like to argue that this is what they did is actually taking something that was already alive and they start chopping down, like removing some components until they end up with a very minimum to sustain life. They kind of synthesize the whole genome for this, what they call mycoplasma laboratories, and just put the minimum necessary genes to these organisms to survive. So they technically create artificial life, but they basically modify what already existed. But now, like, more interesting is creating a cell from the bottom up. So it's something from the cart. Now the thing doing this is a little more complex because when you start building something, there's a lot of properties that emerge. What's called emerging properties, that they're not there, but once it's reached a kind of certain threshold, then you start having different properties that you wouldn't expect to have. And just because they're more than interacting with each other. And that's also another thing, like there's synergetic and epistatic effects, that once you have more components interacting with each other, they start having like interesting effects that you cannot really predict. And another thing is like life itself is like an thermodynamic miracle, right? Schrodinger, the same guy that cat, he wrote a book that's called, ironically, What is Life? And he studied like, or he proposed that, okay, like life seems to be like against the second law of thermodynamics. Like, second law of thermodynamics says that everything tends to increase the entropy of the system, to increase the chaos of the system. But life is a very, very highly organized like, system. But the thing is, like, this doesn't really contradict the second law of thermodynamics because for that going to be true, the system needs to be closed. But life, living organisms, is an open system because they need to interact with the environment. So they have a negative entropy, quote unquote, like they have an organized system by disorganizing the environment. Yeah. So let's talk about like autonomous synthetic biology. That means like we are reconstituting like the functions of the cell by assembling the whole system component by component, module by module, like assembling a jigsaw puzzle, or like building a wall brick by brick, right? Obviously, if you're trying to learn to achieve anything. So let's assemble like very simple stuff. What do you need? You need first something to encapsulate yourself, something that separates the environment from yourself. Then you need some kind of genetic information that will tell to the cell what to do and what it is. And then some kind of metabolic machine to actually do the things that you want. Right? Now for encapsulation, there's lot of different techniques that we have already, like different type of cells, I would say. Like the most simple it will be just emulsion, just basically tiny droplets in a mold, like marginex. Then you have a little more similar to what actual cells are, like where you collide with some vesicles. Then we can have all kind of synthetic materials like hydrogels to create this difference between environment and cell. We can have membranized concentrate and etc. A lot of different techniques. I work, for example, with what I know, which is the simplest way to do like artificial cells, and now the development of microfluidics is even easier to produce artificial cells. So I give this machine, for example, to create those. Those are technically artificial cells. Now we need the other piece of the puzzle, which is machinery, the metabolic machinery. Now, life is extremely complex. Living organisms have multiple components, multiple interactions. Luckily, nowadays we have what we call self systems. This technology actually have more than 100 years. It's more than 100 years old. This guy have a culture of yeasts, and they kill all the cells, and they use those extracts to produce alcohol. Now the thing is, just until very recent, when we were able to produce very cheap and very efficiently, this self-resistance, that's the reason why we very recently we started actually able to work with self-resistance. Now, by definition, this self-resistant is basically any kind of in vitro platform that mimic complex biological processes, could be enzymatic reaction or could be also transcription and translation, without using intact living cells. The component may be from a living cell, but the system itself, after it's processed and purified, is not. Now, there's so many benefits of doing that. It's we have better control for the parameters because we have fewer biological constraints, so we don't have to care if our cells is living. We don't care if it dies or not because it's not alive. The environment is simpler because we can select what we put inside. And because it's not alive, we can put new functions that are sometimes not compatible with life. And we can also use engineered synthetic materials. And that makes this pretty cool to work with. There are different types. For example, the simple one is having a cell, killing the cell, extract the content, purify it, and that's it. Or we can produce each of the components we need separately and then pull it together. And that's certified as not life, but we're mimicking life. This way, we're breaking free from the life constraints. We are kind of playing on, and we can start doing more cool stuff. So now what? Now we have kind of all pieces, not yet. So what we want is genetically programmed artificial cells, like cells. All of the cells are genetically programmed. And these cells should be able to regulate gene expression, basically protein production and function, in response to stimuli from the environment, right? To understand this, we need to go back to the very basic of biology, which is the central dogma of biology, which tells us the flow of genetic information from the genes to the function, which is most of the time proteins. Now, in every single step of this process, there is a control point that will help us to regulate this process. And that is what's called regulation of gene expression. Now, in simple terms, basically you have a gene. If the gene is in a state that it can produce protein, we say this is on. And then sometimes this gene is in a situation where it cannot produce protein, and we call it off. to this duality of having a gene being either on or off, what we call a gene switch, which is our next piece of the puzzle. Now, there are many different types of switches. The most known one, the well-known one, is the transcription factors that probably a lot of you already know. But there are other types, for example, epigenetic switches, for example, this includes like methylation of DNA, includes like chromatin remodulation, etc. And there's another one in the back that's called ribo switches, which is what I actually was working with in my lab. Still working. So there's like a person between like transcription factors and ribo switches. Transcription factors are basically proteins that requires a lot of different interaction, a lot of different complexes of proteins. They tend to be, in terms of regulation, more robust with lower leakage of expression, but because they're more complex, they're harder to work with, they're harder to engineer. Now, ribo switches, they're much more simpler. They're made of RNA. They don't need any other proteins to work. They have been found in bacteria mostly, and people theorize that it's a very ancient mechanism of regulation. Now, these ribo switches, because they are much simpler, they are also easier to engineer. And because they're easier to engineer, we are able to produce ribo switches that can detect and recognize like all kind of different kind of molecules, including synthetic molecules that it's much more harder to achieve with transcription factors. So that means that we have a much bigger, collection of molecules we can interact with and respond to using ribo switches. But of course, it's not a versus. It's actually like it's an alternative, and sometimes they work together to regulate, gene expression. So now, through ribo switches, we can basically emulate a lot of these characteristics that we talked before. It's mainly what is related to, interaction, what is related to, responding to the environment, what is related to regulation. So, for example, interaction with environment, this is a work done by a former postdoc from the unit where he created ribo switch that can respond to histamine. Histamine is one bioactive molecule that is related to allergic reactions and immune responses. So he introduced this histamine ribo switch inside liposome, artificial cells, and he was able to detect histamine in the environment. And by detecting the histamine, he was able to make this cell do different kinds of things. For example, express a important protein, a fluorescent protein. He was able to, release some cargo, some molecules inside these artificial cells, or kill the cell itself, kill the switch. Now my turn was creating intracellular signal. It's just not detecting the environment, but also communicate to different artificial cells communicate with each other. I was also using histamine ribo switch, but I created my own histamine ribo switch because I didn't like him. His ribo switch. So for example, for this one-way chemical communication, for having communication, in general, you need somebody to talk and somebody to listen. Some sender and some receiver. So I create a sender artificial cell that produces a signal, in this case histamine. I create a receiver that contains the ribo switch that detects the histamine and to produce a response, which is in this case fluorescent, green fluorescence. This kind of process have been done before, but in other examples, people have added directly, like manually to the system, this signal. In this case, I'm producing the signal within the system. That's why it's called self-contained system. And doing that, I was able to do this kind of thing. So, for example, this is my control when I just put the histamine, I didn't do anything else, and the histamine was able to activate the response. If I didn't put one of the components for the enzyme, which is a cofactor called PLP, the enzyme didn't produce the histamine, and therefore there's no signal and there's no response. That's why it's black, or like non-fluorescent. And when I have all the components, then I have the whole cascade of signal. And if I have this, spatial rate, I have a better ratio between sender and receiver to start seeing this spatial gradient that is uh, correspond to basically the diffusion of my signal through the space and the response of my artificial cells to this signal. Now I want to make it a little more complex. I decided to make a cascade. So not just one signal, but multiple signals. So I start with the initial signal that is sample processing. Now I create a riboswitch that detects sample processing. If you know sample processing, it's a synthetic antibiotic, therefore there is no natural receptor for this. But I was able to create something that responds to it, which is a riboswitch. And I put the riboswitch in a way that is controlling the expression of my enzyme that is like histamine. So only if I have his cyclophoxine, I will have the enzyme. And only if I have the enzyme, I will have histamine. Only if I have histamine, I will have you. So it's a cascade that needs all the elements to work together. And that's how it looks. So if you look here, this red one is just a transducer. There's no primary sender, there's no primary signal. Therefore, the cascade is not complete and there's no response. It's no green. When I have only the sender without the one who can translate the cyclophoxine into histamine signal, also I have no response. Only if I have both of them together, then I have histamine diffusion and then I have response. So this way I create a cascade of signal only using riboswitches. And this way I'm mimicking like intercellular signaling and protein sensing using an artificial cell. I know it looks simple, it's not much. Now, the big question. How close are we really from achieving actual, self-sufficient artificial life? Well, I'm sorry to disappoint you. The reality is like, not quite yet. We're working on it. We're making some progress. And as you know, progress in science is done by a series of small steps, and we are working toward our final. And with that, I would like to thank you for your attention. If you have any questions, you're welcome. Thank you.
Good job.
Hi, thank you so much for your talk. You mentioned Erwin Schrödinger's book, What Is Life? And I'm wondering if you had any exposure, spending time with a book with the same title that was a response to Schrödinger's book called What Is Life. It was published in 1995 by Carl Sagan's son, Dorian Sagan, and Lynn Margulis, the philosopher of science. Have you heard that book before?
So the question was about how was the...
Okay, yeah. So they talk about life as more of a process that absorbs rather than penetrates. And so they talk about the question as really something that should be thought of along with the realities of how mitochondria were originally their own cells, and then they're absorbed into cells now that have mitochondria, and how the human gut biome is its own plethora of different organisms. And so the answer to what is life in their mind, in this book called What is Life, is that it's not a noun, it's a verb. It's an adaptive symbiosis that absorbs rather than penetrates. And so I'm wondering if that speaks to you at all, if there's, it's not survival of the fittest as much as survival of the most amiable. And that life itself is responsible for its evolution, and not just that DNA is the most successful molecule in the universe. Life itself is its own success, and is a part of its own success. So a lot of people engage with that book, and it's helped me a lot in my thinking too. Same title, What Is Life, but published more recently by people who took Schrödinger's work really seriously.
Okay, for the people online, was a question more like a comment, I think?
Yeah, I guess, yeah.
Yeah, it was about a book also called What Is Life, published like very recently, 1995, by the son of Carl Sagan.
Yeah.
And they explore what is life and what they understand as life, and they say it's more like verb than a noun.
Yes, and it's a symbiotic process.
It's a symbiotic process, which is more absorbing than, or less
penetrating.
Than penetrating. I mean, yeah. The thing with life is so complex that is really, really hard to define, and you also have different kind of point of view, different ways of you can kind of interpret life. This is one of them, which is completely valid. Uh, Personally, I haven't read a book. I'm also, yeah, I wouldn't dare to define life or to try to explain it at all. Uh, just as something. No, but like, yeah, life, I think it's a process rather than a thing. Uh, and that's probably why it's so difficult to explain, because the process is dynamic, is changing, is like what was life at the origin of life is way different what we understand as life now, and what it could be in the future, or like what we're trying to, when we explore the universe for life, we try to find something that we think is life based on what we know on Earth, but it may not be. So that's the same with life. We know it's there. It's extremely hard to define. It's extremely hard to, to put a finger on. So yeah, it's a question for centuries and generations. Yeah. Thank you for your question. Oh, you're going to
Maybe repeat.
Have you ever heard about an open worm project?
Open worm project.
Yeah, there is like an open source project by some university, I don't remember who. They reconstruct some biological organism, a simple worm, in a computer, in a simulation, up to a cell level. They simulate all the activity inside this organism, including neural system with a couple of hundred neurons. They simulate the environment. Is this thing alive?
Can you repeat the question?
So the question was, there's a project called Open Worm, where basically they simulate an organism by kind of all the tiny components, and they assemble it in a computer, and then try to recreate organisms, I guess. And the question was if that's life. I wouldn't say it's a physical life. It's a simulation of life, the same as what the artificial intelligence is intelligence or not. It's basically the same thing. It's like, yeah, we're simulating life. We can kind of recreate, but I guess depending how you interpret this characteristic of life, you may or may not say this is life. It's a simulation, of course, yes. But life as a physical thing, I wouldn't say it's life. It definitely could help you to understand what is needed to, have an organism. If you are able to, extrapolate what you create in this computer into like a physical world, then maybe. But until you do that, it's just a simulation.
So you're trying to make artificial life. Now, other people are trying to make like machines or say a self-driving car.
Yes.
Do you think what you do, or like the way you think, is the same as someone who's trying to make like a complex machine, or is it different?
So the question was for the people on the internet is people are trying to have a complex machine that an artificial intelligence, artificial situation where basically they can also kind of create a complex entities from like basic components, and if it is similar to trying to create artificial life, I think in principle, like in essence, is maybe it is, but it's similar in the way this is a bottom-up approach. You start with the simple and go to the complex. In that regard, it's similar. It's kind of the same purpose. You try to recreate something complex that do like interesting things based on like minimum set of components. It's similar to creating like a simple cell. I wouldn't say it's real life, obviously, but the way it's approached, the way it's probably very, very simple. This synthetic biology is kind of the middle between biology, traditional biology, and engineering. So basically, we have the same mindset in creating, these complex systems, the same as that working with machines have when they are creating their machine complex machines. Yes. Any other question?
I have a question.
Oh, Malak, yes.
I have a question about the artificial cells.
Yes.
Is the creation or the use of artificial cells, is it just a means to simplify the biological system to study the mechanisms and principles of biological cells, or is it maybe something that in maybe a couple of years, decades from now, we can maybe experience as a treatment to some kind of medical issues?
So the question was, if the working with creating artificial cells is just a way to study life by simplifying the processes, or maybe in the future could be also like a tool for more like treating diseases or like other. The answer is yes. Right now at this stage, like because we're not really advanced, what we can do is simplify the system and understanding. The human mind is not prepared to understand a very, very, very complex system with many, many, many interactions. That's why we have computers nowadays for doing that. But by kind of splitting the system in simpler components, we can understand them. In the future, we may be able to reach the level where we have most of the components like assembled in a system that we can understand more complex situation. Actually, that's one of the goals. In order to have truly artificial cells, you actually have to have all these components. And at this point, we don't really, because it's way, way too complex at this point. Artificial cells, or the study of artificial cells, or assembling these systems, you have several applications. Like, for example, trying to create delivery systems for treating diseases, or like understanding what processes are involved in certain cancers or certain other like metabolic diseases, for example. It is a tool and it's a way to understand life and to maybe in the future have more practical applications. Oh, another question. Yes.
What do you think about extraterrestrial life?
The question was what I think about extraterrestrial life. That's also a very, very controversial topic to say what is life. Especially because now, on top of what is life in nature, is like if there's life outside what we know. By probabilities, there must be something around, like outside that we don't know. At this point is really, we cannot really tell if there's a reason. It's impossible to prove something, to prove that something doesn't exist, that something does exist. So, because we don't have evidence, we cannot tell if there is or there isn't. No, as I was saying before, like what we understand as life is based on what we have on Earth, right? And we are looking in the universe for signs that resemble what we have as life. But what if it's not? What if life is not what maybe life for us is like this, but in other places there is not. But we don't know. And it's impossible right now to, really have an answer for that. Yeah, well, thank you very much.
Do you think that there is a possibility that if you engineer a form of life that, like if you're going to create an artificial life form, and then can you create it to survive on a planet or survive in an inhospitable environment like space?
So the question was, if I was going to create an artificial life, if I would, create in a way that it survived like in harsh environments or like in other planets. Technically it's possible. We are trying to, genetically modify already living organisms to be able to, withstand like harsh environments. I don't think there will be any restriction for doing the same thing on artificial cells. Right? I think it's definitely possible. although we still have the restriction that we haven't really reached like proper education ourselves, but I mean, in the future, maybe it's possible, yeah. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
We need to switch the.
Sorry, we're just setting up for the next speaker. Hi, okay, so this will be our last break. Please go ahead if you'd like to grab a final dessert or a drink or something like that, and then settle back in for our final pair of speakers. Thank you so much. Thank you.
That was amazing. Great job.
Thank you.
Really nice. So I have a question actually, because you were saying we don't know the exact reasons. So they look at the model or other situations. Yeah. So one is it's still, even though we knew
You don't need there's no
there's a minimum set of right. Yeah, right. Yeah.
we are really far from getting what we're asking. I didn't have to hear that. But besides those, that was
There are
Well, that's really good. I mean, the books like great topic. Biosphere, microbiology, they talk about spirituality also. Um, and really what they're trying to get at is a more symbiotic approach to life itself. And thinking about how life cells, organisms are not seeking to outcompete one another so much as finding such a homeostasis with other forms of life. And I'm curious to see how that kind of thinking is influencing or not yet a part of the artificial cells. Just to give us a thought. I don't even answer it.
I also think that, it's like evolution doesn't really happen much.
Yes. Yeah.
And basically, just find a of like movement because despite of different it's still governed by the physical law. So you still have to follow the law that I really like basically reaches everywhere. Was able to treat this letter raw energy and creativity. Basically everything that happens is full of but it's not that intentional or like consciously doing it. It just happens because all the laws of learning. And that's why it's like a miracle, a lot of people who have
Maybe you're more optimistic or more skeptic about the possibility of finding microorganisms in our solar system outside. Yes or no? Enchiladas? Type yes or no?
Optimistic in a way, because we can understand life without really having that.
And we
So
have,
we have some fun stuff.
yeah.
We don't really say that we have life that is not right, as we know. It's interesting, yeah.
Hi, guys.
Hi, Sai.
Hi,
普通
Sai.
の中華のミラー、イエスレディオのアカネと南アイリー、ウヌレディオで数4回英語とうちなずちさに行って、うさら話してきやきちん、うどりん。Oh, yeah, thank you. I mean, that was a kind of Okinawan Japanese introduction to our podcast. We do every time. So, Yes Radio is our podcast name. Have you ever heard Yes before? You know what it is? It's like, it doesn't have any meanings, basically, but it's like, how do you say, like, iya like this. You know, have you ever like seen Isa, like a traditional dance kind of thing? Or like traditional songs and everyone said, iya and you say like, hi. It's like we kind of grooving in a good mood. Anyways, that's our name. I put yes as a name because I want to kind of represent what we are and where we're from. Yeah, that's it. And we usually talk in random topics, but mainly like social issues or how to preserve Okinawan culture. And we have a variety of guests who study Okinawan dialect at university and who
try to retrieve Okinawan traditional tattoos like I have on my not face, what is it? Hand. Like hajiji, have you ever guys, you know? Oh wow. It's like a Okinawan traditional tribal tattoo, which Japanese government or the US government banned after how many years ago? You should search a long time ago. And we once interviewed tattoo artists doing hajiji as like hajita before and yeah. Oh yeah. So yeah, the picture on the right bottom is like kind of close to the traditional design for original hajiji, not like my head, not like my design. And in the middle of the picture is she's a professor of Mayo University who studies Vivian language. And like it's funny, once we had my grandma to speak about what World War II and when she was maybe 12 or 13, and I used my dad for translating from like very Okinawan dialect to like a regular Japanese. And oh, the picture on the right upper is my grandpa when he turned to 97 years. In Okinawa, we usually have a celebration called Kajimaya when people turn into 96 or 7. Yeah, that's basically like we pick as a topic based on like Okinawan traditionals. So I put today's theme as like, can intellect save Okinawa? What I wanted is like Okinawa is very famous for like entertaining, like dancing, singing, a lot of beautiful people like us, and very famous for like, thank you, show industry, China. We are, it's easily, it's getting easier to be famous. But I just thought, like, is there anyone who is really, like, famous as bunkaji? It's like, how do you say it? Like, someone famous for more intellectual way. Is that right in English? Like, academic? Yeah, someone smart. Yeah. Please bear with us. Like we don't speak English like 100% all the time. So that's why we started our podcast because as an Okinawan we have a lot of social issues that we are the highest corporate rate. And we have highest divorce rate, and we have a lot of single mothers, and what else? Like a lot of problems. And to represent our culture and then thrive our culture again in a big, like proud of ourselves. Is I thought like improving our intellect and to have a space that people are allowed to talk about politics or the culture issue like openly comfortable can save or help people to make them believe that like there is nothing we can't do, right? So, are you agree? I mean, I keep speaking because since we have one mic, so yeah.
Okay, thank you, Yami. So that's what we do in a radio, and then I want to tell you like how we started this radio. It's very unique, and then so we've been friends since university, and then we went to school in America, and then we were working in Tokyo for a few years, and we just got back to Okinawa because it's a very comfortable place to live, and then so she told me like we should do something with our experience. And then so after we experienced a lot, and then we thought like Okinawa is not just a resort island. We have strong identity, and then we have strong culture, and then we need people to lead, and then how to preserve our culture. We need to think a lot of things. So we want to start this to keep doing it, and then
Hopefully, we improve our English skills.
yes.
I need you guys' help.
So we sometimes pick up the social topics, and we talk in the radio at our level as a local Okinawan people, and then we sometimes invite the guests. It's not like a public media, so we can talk with a real conversation. That's the one of the purpose we want to do. And then so she talked about what we pick up as topic, and then about the Okinawan language topic. It says episode 17 was very impressive for me because the language we speak is not Japanese, but not also Okinawan language. It's like a Japanese Okinawan language, which it's called Uchinai Yamatoguchi in Japanese. It's like a very new language. That's like a new thing we knew, and then we were having struggle we wanted to brush up the Okinawan language that we're losing, but it's very difficult because we don't use it anymore. And then we are not 100% perfect as a Japanese language. It's like a difficult thing for us to understand, but she explained it, and then we were very comfortable with it. That's a new thing. She studied in Finland about the language in Finland. It has the same situation in Okinawa. It was a very good explanation. And then also, we talked about World War II with her grandma. She was talking about her experience in the war. But that's what she said was, it was very tough at the war. And then Okinawa has got to improve our social level, and then a financial level after the war. And now we are very, we should appreciate what we have, and then also we are still we still have many problems compared to mainland Japan, but we're still we need to understand the situation in Okinawa, and then also we should appreciate what we have. That's what she taught us. That was a good thing too. And so this year is 50 years after we became Japan from America after the war. And in the news, it's like a celebration as a 50 years, but for us, it's not a celebration. It's like like it's kind of hard to explain, but
it's really complex feelings that we felt. Japanese government wanted it to make it as an anniversary or celebration, and yay, Okinawa getting a bit richer. But really, yeah, if I compare with my grandma's generation, yeah, we are able to access any education, like we are able to go to mainland to have a job and nobody's gonna, have judge for just being Okinawan that, 50 years ago, Okinawan local get kind of discrimination in mainland too. But we still have the issue of the use spaces here. And at the bottom, the reason why we, stay on the way to solve that problem is because we're not independent financially, economically yet. So, yeah, it was kind of good and bad feeling everything together. And I think a lot of Okinawan has a different opinion. Everyone kind of divided what they want to do. So yeah, we talked about it before. Do you want to talk about the practice? Yeah. Does anyone marry with Okinawans? Okay, maybe you will. You will someday, right? Because I can see maybe most of you guys are not from Okinawa. So if you ever get a chance to get married with Okinawans, you will need to take care of a really great tune and this one right here, it's called Butsudan altar. Like we need to ancestor, and we need to worship ancestor. And we have so many rules, like so many events and so many family issues by doing it. So we kind of recall this episode to, telling our parents like stop fighting about, who's gonna take care of the other things. And yeah, it's really a random topics, but every time we take the episode, like we start thinking again, like, what are we? Who are we? Like, and a lot of guests who is from Okinawa, everyone says like they experience the struggle of Okinawan identity. It's like, are we Okinawan or are we Japanese or what the fuck are we, Like we're a mix of everything. And the generation we grew up is like mix of not only mainland Japan, Okinawa, but also like American culture a lot. Because me and Akane used to work on base and we dated with Americans and we went to the States for study and we love hip hops and so, we are a mix of everything, like literally. And mix of everything is modern Okinawan. I don't know. We, still try to figure out like what are we? And yeah. I kind of want to ask you guys about, like, is there any struggles or like a big cultural gap when you guys move into Okinawa or the mainland Japan? Yeah, like someone. If it's okay to share the experience.
Yes, so actually my point, I study Okinawan culture as well, but I study from my perspective. And I'm not sure that I do it correctly, but in general, so actually the point is to try to understand why Okinawa is not Japan. like myself. Yeah, okay, so, and I guess the main issue which I found in Okinawa is that when locals says yes, it doesn't mean yes.
That's very Japanese.
No,
Okinawans?
yes, Okinawa, but when I come to mainland, if someone say yes, it's 100% yes. So in terms of doing business, it means in Okinawa there are a lot of risks, and I guess this risk they don't allow to this island to develop very well. So in mainland it's slightly different. It's based on like confidence, respect, like tied relationships, economic relationships, right? But here in Okinawa, it's completely different. So, and me, I used to live in mainland before, and after that I came to Okinawa, and I was shocked. Yeah, seriously, I was shocked about that it's not really Japan. It's something completely different. So it's kind of yeah, you speak Japanese language, right? But you live in quite different environment. And I guess Americans, yeah, of course, Americans they make some influence on the local culture, but I guess finally it's like a good influence. So without this influence, Okinawa will be something different, and I'm not sure it will be something like better than it's now. Yeah, so it's. Huh? An example, of course, if so for example, today, I went to a bank and I was needed to transfer money to the US account. It's Okinawan bank. It's kind of large bank here, right? And they said me they cannot do it. And the reason is that I can transfer to only my family members. I cannot transfer to my friend. And is it normal? It's normal. So actually the function of bank is to keep money and to transfer money. It's like the main functions. But here in Okinawa, even when I visit the bank, I cannot make even such simple operation. How guys are going to do business here?
Can I get the mic?
Yeah, is there anyone who experienced like the same ways as he did on the bed?
I don't experience it that way, but I do have an analogy that came to mind when I came to Okinawa. It felt very familiar to me as an African American and as a half Puerto Rican. So I think of Puerto Rico and the United States is very similar to Okinawa and Japan, whereas the people of Puerto Rico, you know, they're Commonwealth, they're American, but are they real, right? Very strong cultural identity, very strong culture, but again, dealing with a lot of the similar problems with poverty, just all the social ills of, you know, an unwanted stepchild, so to speak, you know? And I do understand the idea of certain groups, ethnic groups, minorities, we are kind of relegated to the realm of entertainment, of the artists, in, you know, the minstrel show, you know. But we don't have, because of poverty or other things, at least this is how I see it. You have to have resources to think about artificial intelligence, right? Instead of how am I gonna get a meal on the table, you know, and take care of my kids. So those real basic needs consume a lot of mental and intellectual resources. And kids that may have a dream of being something else, a scientist, you know, a doctor, we pump them with these ideas that these are some of the things that will bring you out of poverty. But then we don't provide the resources for them to get that. So it's complicated. I get it. I totally get it. So I appreciate this conversation.
I think, this opportunity that we can speak to you guys, to you guys is like, yeah, it's a small accomplish that we have done, intellect can save us. We can encourage other Okinawan people that, like us, normal human beings can stand up talking to a lot of aliens here. Yeah, and to share like the same value that, I don't know. Yeah. Is there anyone who wants to share like experience in Okinawa or with Okinawans? Hi.
Can I ask a question?
Yes, yes.
Who has been your most surprising guest? Like, who did you learn the most from?
Oh.
Not everyone was surprising because we're the best, basically. So I kind of know like what's gonna happen, what you're gonna talk, yeah, right? And I just follow maybe my grandma, like she's been telling what she experienced through the war or after the war, like she wasn't able to go to school, like she wasn't able to write and read. And I have heard the story like 100 times in my whole life, and I was so tired of it. But after I, started doing the podcast and seeing like all the, my grandma or the old people is passing away, okay, I need to do, make it their story or their narrative as an archive because we will never be reached to this real conversation anymore. And suddenly it means a lot. So yeah.
For me, as a guest, I invited my friend from Bhutan, and then she came to Okinawa 2 years ago, and we became friends. And then she is so smart girl. She can speak more than like 8 languages, and then she graduated Todai, and she told us about. We asked her what the happiness in your country, because Bhutan is famous for the happiness country in the world. And then she told me that like she lived in many countries and then she experienced a lot, and then but after that she realized that that how close to education and then medical care, and then how strong the relationship between people are the most important to increase your happiness. That's what she said. And then it was very like, I agree 100% about it. Okinawa is kind of close to it because we are not that rich, and then we are not like a developed area like Tokyo, but we are close to family, and then we can, we can make friends easily, and we can go to hospital. But when it comes to education, it's maybe better in mainland Japan or other countries, but it's not that expensive. Like when I went to America, the university is very expensive and, it was very hard. So from that episode, I appreciate a lot of things, what I have, and then Wuhan is a good explanation for me. That was a good episode, like environment and radio. And then also, it's not a guess, but we talked about the social media depression in episode 6. She was social media depression.
Oh, wait.
Yeah. So she told me about
Is that
it.
my name?
And then I haven't experienced that, but I might get depressed from the Instagram or anything like that because I use it a lot for work. Like it was a good episode, and then we talked about Tinder, and then we also talked about women's masturbation with health, and also yeah, Okinawa poverty. She
No, but what's the most surprising thing where you don't need to introduce everything? Okay, that's
yeah. I just introduced what I like.
I have a question.
Yes.
Was there anything, was there anything that you were kind of scared? Like, you're like, okay, we're gonna take a step out and we're gonna put this out to the world. And like, when did you feel maybe the most vulnerable or the most like, I don't know how this is gonna be received, but I'm gonna do it anyway?
As on topic?
Yeah. Or maybe an audience. Like, I'm even thinking about talking about the bases, but like, I'm an American, right? So I'm sure you're like, all right, like, I guess I'll say it, So is there a topic or an audience or something like that that you felt apprehensive, but you did it anyway?
Because we don't fake it. We're always honest, and we don't have to pretend.
Or aren't you get nervous about it?
I don't get nervous.
Oh, she's special. She's weird.
I think I'm very, positive, optimistic person.
She's very focused on herself.
Every time I, set the topic and we should do, talk like this, we cannot say this, this word or like political correctness, anything, but she's like, what is political correctness? But we are doing like social issue podcast, but she has no idea. But that makes her very brave and don't give a, shit for anything. But maybe it will be, a good chance to learn about what's going on in the world. But like a couple days ago, we were appear on some politicians' YouTube, and they asked, the topic was a base. And yeah, that was really weird. We have strong opinion about, how to, I don't know, save the Japanese as a protection, or, we also have, economic advantages from university too. But when it comes to in other companies or the other association platform, then I get a bit nervous. That maybe, they're not gonna love what I'm gonna say because we don't care that what people think or like, but it's just our one of a kind of rule that we just being honest, and if we make mistake, then I'm gonna apologize, right? That's the only we can do. So I'm sorry for being here. Yeah.
Okay. So thanks for sharing this with us. I think it's awesome you're here because I think this is really also what Nerd Night is about, like sharing community things, and especially, you can see it, right? There's not a lot of Japanese and Okinawans here, although I know, like at OIS or Yudai, there's many. It's maybe a little bit coincidence there's not many today, but it's not only because it's very mixed community, right? Very many nationalities. But I think most of us, or everyone here, is really interested though in Okinawan culture, Japanese language. So we need you, people, you guys like you, girls like you, to share this with us, because how else are we going to know? Of course, some of us are friends from here, but it's hard when you, for example, where Eloise or you or somewhere on base maybe, it's hard to make friends that are from Okinawa or Japan, and you don't have that many. You're not living here a long time. You don't have family here, so it's really nice that there's people like you sharing this with us. So thank you for that. And I'm not Japanese. I'm not Asian. I'm not American. I'm from a tiny, tiny place in Europe where there's only, as far as I know, 4 people in Okinawa that are from the same country that I'm from. And I love Okinawa because it's such a strong Japanese culture, like a mixture of, Okinawans are a mixture as well from Japanese and even a little bit American and everything. So as an outsider, I find it a little bit more easy to be here compared to mainland. I've never lived in mainland though, but just as a visitor. So I think it's nice, the mixed culture, and you don't have to define what is Okinawan, what is Japanese, or what am I. You're just you're just a person sharing your life experience. So yeah, I think for many outsiders, like non-Okinawa, non-Japanese, it's a nice space here. People are welcoming, they are interested. Maybe not everyone, but the people I meet. So yeah, I wanted to share it with you. Just please keep going, sharing this. It would be nice. And I was interested to ask you, where do you find your guests? And do you need more guests? And
Yes.
do you want to do a shout out here? Like, we would really love to talk to someone that is.
Okay, so who wants to be the guest? I will ask you guys individually. You guys can chat, right? But how have we found a guest? Yeah, it's basically like my friends, and I sometimes send a DM to like some professors or someone famous for a certain study, but most of them don't reply to me. So yeah, I've heard that there is like a professor at least today, or at least over like who. I don't know, but
We have a lot of people from Voice, right?
Right?
Show of hands, maybe? Okay.
oh
Yeah, and then how about you guys? I know we have.
oh yeah.
Okay, yeah, so that's you.
Okay, whoever puts their hands up will be the next guest. And we can't pay for you guys, so just volunteer.
Can I nominate somebody?
Yes.
I would like to nominate Shio. Yeah. she's had one of the most amazing lives I've ever heard of. Oh. Please have a discussion with her about Okinawa.
Thank you, Crystal. My name is Sheila Tidia. I was born here and I grew up here also. And I felt same, like struggle. Like my mom's from mainland Japan, father's from Okinawa. And yeah, I have cousins from Hawaii, Taiwan mix, and Japanese mix, and I have friends from America and different South Africa and everywhere. So I was I would say a struggle, but I went to different countries and I found here Okinawa is unique and valuable place. Like, sorry, your name?
Miri.
Sorry. Miri. It says like you felt comfortable here because we're mixed culture and also I think most of the people were so mixed because like nowadays more mixed people and this is unique. With what makes you unique, each person. So I want to use that as a power of Okinawa. And also, I work at the JICA, which is I go to Africa for, I did a public health in Central Africa, around Central Africa for 2 years. And yeah, I came back here and I want to make Okinawa a better place. So let's work together. Thank you.
How long do we have? Well, technically we're at time. So if you want to wrap it up. Yeah.
Okay, so it's all about ESS radio, so please message us if you want to be a guest. And then, so as a main job, she's doing digital marketing and I'm doing a wedding planner. And then outside, I'm doing this called cha ashibi, which is like we call it cha. So first of all, cha ashibi means very enjoyable, play a lot, like hang out a lot, means in Okinawan language. And then it's a lifestyle community, and then we're doing volunteering and then yoga activities, and then we collaborate with Churamura and then preserve sea turtle things, and then we do pick up garbage at the beach, and we also do children cafeteria, which is for the local community. And so as we said, the poverty in Okinawa is a very big problem, and then we collaborate with the city hall and like a local office, and then they told us to use lost food to give free food to the children at the summer vacation. And then because of the COVID, sometimes school is closed and then parents go out to work. So children need to take care of them, take care of themselves. So we try to solve that problem as a community, and then we cook and give them a free food once a month with a family movie night. And yeah, we do a lot of things, and then we also ask volunteers stuff, and we want to make friends who speak different language, so children will be very happy for it. That's how you connect to the local people, maybe. So you can search in Instagram, and we always ask volunteers stuff and who wants to collaborate at the event. We sometimes do the market, and we invite the aromatherapist to do a workshop things, and then we also do clothing swap. So we collect some clothing and then give them free to the local community. That's what we do. So please check out the Chashibi as well. That's all for today.
Can I ask one more question?
Yes.
just one thing that I mentioned. So during your speech, you talked something about independence of Okinawa, right? So how do you imagine that? So if you just get independence one day, so it's like no Japanese government, no American bases, and how would you imagine the future of Okinawa? So how is it going to be?
But me personally, I not against newer spaces here because since Japanese law is not good enough to protect ourselves. Yeah, I don't know. It's just my opinion. So, and like you said, Japanese government without Japanese government, but we're Japan, so we still need to figure out how to merge like Okinawans and how to say like mainland government or mainlanders. I don't know how to describe it right, but yeah, if you know our kids generation going to be able to have full access to good education and none of the kids were not have a trouble not to having a breakfast or dinner. It's like really a basic stuff. So saying independent is not like a fancy way. You know, we just like she introduced as a Bhutan. If we are able to have an access for like good education, we are able to have a house with a roof and say like public transportation is like basic stuff, you know, but there's a lot of kids that not even aware of that, you know, because we're locals, like we're born and raised in Okinawa, but our family is kind of more not wealth, but it's not in a poor situation never. So I was able to go to university. I was able to go to States. I was able to go to mainland to get a job, and now I'm here. This is not something I have done by myself, right? It's just an environmental issue. So, a lot of Okinawans don't have the same opportunity than I did. So maybe independent in idealistically way, is everyone going to be the same level as me or higher level? I don't know who that is, but yeah.
I mean, it's like,
I think, if I may.
Yeah.
I don't think that the question is kicking out anyone. I think the issue is around sovereignty.
Yeah.
Right? About them having self-determination, that people or other groups are not coming and extracting the resources and the wealth from the community in such a way that they end up, not benefiting from their own resources, you see. So them being attached as Japanese, they don't have their own sovereignty. They don't have say over how many bases are here, right? Or who gets to, set policy, or who gets to distribute resources. So it's not a question of kicking out anybody. It's a question about empowerment and who gets to decide what happens to the people.
Yeah, but it's still like exchange, so there are two.
Business is business.
Like for example, right? So let's imagine some family. There is a teenager kid, right? So a teenager kid, he dreams about independence, right? Yeah, it's really cool, right?
Right.
But still, like the kid actually depends on the parents because parents they have to provide like basic needs for the kid, right? Like education, etc. Right?
But that's the whole point. You paternalize,
Yes.
right? Your infant, it's like seeing them in a paternalistic way. And that's part of the problem. They grown ass people. You know, they're not kids. And so setting up a system where they're dependent on the charity or the goodness or the wisdom of Japan is not what they're looking for. Even they're not teenagers. They were
I know it. It's just example
a dynasty.
It was just example of kind of exchange between like so in the world, you know, we live so we live on the same planet, right? And it's constant exchange between countries, between nations, between cultures, etc. So it's to me it's impossible to imagine Okinawa like a separate island without any like influence of American.
But that's not what they're. But that's not what they're asking.
Yeah.
That's not what the demand is.
Yeah,
The demand is treat us as equal.
As equal, yeah.
If you can come and take the resources, then give something back. Don't just come and take it. I want to be in charge of my own money.
Yeah, but they provide, so like the mainland, okay, so they take some decisions here, right? So maybe in some way they should discriminate them, but they provide like access to education, as you mentioned, right? They provide equipment for this restaurant as well, comes from mainland, right? They provide cars, all these cars behind us are from mainland. And it means like in some way, economically, you depend on the mainland, and in some way you have to pay back. And you pay back with your independence. So that's my question.
That was too difficult to answer.
Yeah. It's a
But how do you like living in Okinawa so far?
I mean, there are good things, there are bad things, like everywhere.
But do you like Okinawa?
He ain't left.
When you
Oh my God.
When you talk about some piece of land, or about people, or about weather. What do you
You
mean?
should think simple. Like if you love living here and I love you too, and that's in a way. So maybe I can talk about with you maybe a couple years later because I cannot speak English.
Your English is great.
Thank you. So yeah, we can discuss later.
Is there any, maybe we should.
I think, can we thank them? I, for one, really loved that talk. I thought it was great. I'm definitely going to invite more podcasters. Yeah, thank you so much for coming out. I'm sorry, it was great. The first time I met them was literally 5 minutes before the talk. So thank you for taking a risk on Nerd Night and coming to put yourself out here. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much, and I'm sure everyone here appreciated the conversation. And I'm sure a lot of people are going to reach out to get a spot on your show. So. And then that concludes Nerd Night, September 9th. Thank you so much to everybody who came out. It's incredible to see you. And before we wrap up completely, please put it in your diaries, in your calendars. We are doing a special Nerd Night Sunday, the 16th of October. Only one speaker, but the talk will be in Japanese, and we will have simultaneous translation thanks to an amazing volunteer. Thank you, Moika. And and I guess Meg wants to add to that.
Yeah, I just want to say, so Moika is here. She's just visiting Okinawa, and she agreed to come translate for us. So I want to make sure that I call her out to say thank you. Please put it in your calendar. It'll be October 16th. Lima-san set it up for us. So, do you want to
Thank you. Thank you, Wina.
It's great for our country in some of American people they didn't know about our where is Myanmar. Everybody easy to know is Thailand, China, is Myanmar is there. Including in ASEAN, Southern ASEAN countries, we have a lot of many products, everything. And but we have to the military force, and then our people is difficult to stay day by day. Most of people dying, like the Ukraine. The war is 40 years over. The war, in the between the war, the children they can go to the school. The parents they have the everyday handling or the military training. So I will be sharing about our country. I hope if you know our situation and as much as you can be support to our country, I hope so. So let's see you August 16. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
And Wina-san is very kindly, he's gonna make some awesome Myanmar dishes that day, so special Myanmar dishes that night. That's it. Please, I think what is the official closing time?
We have 25 minutes before we have to head out, so warm up.
Is the kitchen? Thank you.
The kitchen closed,
It's still open. It's open.
It's still open?
Yeah, perfect. 20 minutes. Grab your last drinks.
20 minutes?
Yeah.
20 minutes?
Yep.
Oh, sure. We have time? No, I don't think I have time to do it.
That is summer.